Saigon Gin.
This week, I am interviewing Lucy Hay from Bank to Right, whose YouTube channel I'm a big fan of and have gotten a lot of knowledge and things from it. And so I invite you all to check that out because it's a stellar channel full of tons and tons of information delivered straight up, no chaser. And I just want to know, sort of for my first question, people come to you with a lot of scripts and ideas, I'm guessing. And, you know, what do you think, in your opinion, that most of them lack?
Oh gosh. I think probably the first thing that really kind of jumps out at me as being a problem for writers to really get a handle on is probably the concepts. There's a lot of writers thinking that it's the execution that counts, that, you know, your idea at its heart doesn't have to be awesome. And they'll say, oh, well, you know, there's loads of films and books and TV shows with not great ideas at their heart, and or they're derivative or whatever, and therefore, you know, it doesn't have to be awesome. But, you know, especially if you're working on a spec level, it has to be awesome. It has to be something that is pre-sold and genre busting if it's something that we're very familiar with, or it has to be something that's, you know, got a sense of originality to it that we haven't seen before, or some kind of compelling thing, that je ne sais quoi, that whatever it is, to really make us excited. Because producers, filmmakers, anyone that's getting involved in the making of that film or TV show, you know, they're going to be investing thousands of hours at the very least in your script. So it has to be awesome. We have to be excited about it. Otherwise, what's the point? You know, I mean, I think it was Stephen King who said that ideas are like table salt, and it's talent that counts. And it's like, yeah, it's true. On one hand, you know, ideas are everywhere. They're literally everywhere. So if that's the case, we might as well do our own ideas. Why would we bother with yours if it's not that great? So, you know, it's got to be really, really awesome at the heart of the concept. And also it's got to make sense as well. There's a hell of a lot of half-baked concepts around that just don't make any sense. I was talking to a writer only this afternoon, and he said, you know, what did I like about his screenplay? And I said, I like the fact that it makes sense. And he thought that I was joking. And it's like, I'm serious. It's so rare to find a script that goes from beginning to the end and I know exactly what's going on. It's so rare that happens. And he'd done a really good job of building up from the concept through to the execution. And yeah, it needed loads of work. You know, the actual execution needed loads of work, but at its heart had a nice, meaningful, compelling story that was sweet and nice and engaged me. And that just doesn't happen very often, because very often it's derivative or boring. It's rehashes of stuff that I've already seen, or it's just insane, or even worse, it's both.
um, on my side of the fence, we're talking a lot about, as well, specifically about making a movie for $1,000. If you're making a movie for $1,000, what do you think is most important that your film have?
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, $1,000 is not going to get you very far, obviously,
No.
and I'm sure you know that. I think in terms of money and budgets, I think logistics is probably the most important thing. You know, the idea of setting up for the day and setting down, and how many characters you have and how many locations you have. You know, you've got to do it all within those parameters, and you've got to know what those parameters are and what is possible for what money. And $1,000 is just not going to get you very far. So you've got to actually kind of lay out what those parameters are in terms of, you know, how long the shoot needs to be, what you can actually utilize. I mean, you can kiss goodbye to things like you know, makeup, you know, lots of makeup and lots of locations, lots of you know, outside space, studio time, you know, all of that kind of stuff, which I'm sure you know. You know, expensive things like animals and explosions and children. You know, none of those things are going to be achievable for $1,000. So you've got to actually kind of work out what those parameters are, you know, the kind of box around your budget, I would say, and then say, what is the best story I can come up with within these parameters? Because that's essentially what everyone's doing in the industry most of the time. They're saying, how much money have I got and what can I do for that money? You know, you can come up with something truly awesome and truly groundbreaking, but you've got to be realistic as well. So it's this question of kind of balancing your business side and your imagination side, and it can be done. It absolutely can be done. You can do some brilliant work within the parameters of what you're able to achieve. I work with directors and writer directors in particular at extremely low budgets, and they'll come to me saying, we've got access to this house, you know, what can we do within this house, and actually just shoot it all on location inside this house, and maybe we've got access to this particular actor, or just one actor, or just two actors, and maybe something else, you know, a bunch of costumes or whatever. And it's like, I've seen them do amazing work within these constraints. It's just a question of knowing what's possible for what money. So yeah, that's what I would say to you is you've got your grand money, you've got a certain access to a certain amount of things, like you've got your own house, hopefully, maybe you've got your own dog. If you really want to stick a dog in it, you know, maybe you could get your own dog to do something. It's working within these parameters and working within what is possible and what you can get. And actually, you know, I don't want to use that horrible, dreadful, cliched phrase, but thinking outside the box, like, you know, if you need a dead animal, maybe go and look for some roadkill.
That's quite possibly the best tip that I've gotten on this channel yet. Which like what you're talking about is something that I talk about a lot, which is resource-based filmmaking, where it's like, you know, in sort of that Robert Rodriguez kind of mold, where it's like, if you have a guitar case and, you know, a bunch of fake guns and a turtle, you know, you make a movie based around those things. Do you think that's, I think a lot of people sort of rely on that as sort of like a crutch. Do you think that's more important to base your movie around things you have, or do you think if you come up with like a kick-ass concept like Primer or something like that, like, do you think that's more of a way to go, or did they sort of work hand in hand?
I really like your idea of resources-based filmmaking. You know, certainly the writer directors and the screenwriters that I've seen advance in their careers over the last 15 years that I've been a script editor, they have kind of subscribed to this notion of, we're a whole team of people together, and we're going to actually kind of brainstorm what is possible, and we're all going to move forward together. And I'm a really big fan of that idea. But equally, I also understand that that's not possible for everyone. You know, some people, especially people who have disabilities, for example, who are maybe working alone, people who have come from backgrounds of poverty or single parenthood, like I did back in the day. You know, you end up working alone for a lot of it because it's not possible for you to kind of band together with people and go out and do various things. You know, if you've got certain commitments or certain limitations and problems, you know, like chronic illness as well. So I think it's a good idea, though, to actually still, regardless of whether you're working alone or whether you're working as part of a team, I think it's always a good thing to know what's possible for what money, just because it actually helps inform your ability to write screenplays that are actually achievable.
Well, you were speaking about budgets. Do you think there's a formula to low budget writing, the same way that we sort of apply Save the Cat to larger budget writing, or can you apply Save the Cat to something where, you know, the budget is going to be something within the realm of $1,000?
I think anything's possible, really. I mean, I don't really think about the Save the Cat model, to be honest. It kind of came around after I'd already started. I'm very much a kind of 3 acts kind of gal, because you know, when I first started out, the only book that was available was screenplay by Sid
Good
Field.
feel.
So I kind of did the whole kind of old school thing, you know, with Aristotle, Sid Field. I read a bit of Robert McKee and, you know, all those other things. And so I'm very much old school, just because I think of the three acts as being beginning, middle, end, and not necessarily in that order. And, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I think it's important to remember that Blake Snyder never meant for it to be applied in that way, and he's not around anymore, and to kind of, you know, set the record straight. And certainly I think Save the Cat can be really, really useful for beginning writers and new writers in particular, because it actually gives this sequential framework for writers who maybe struggle with the more holistic kind of ways of looking at it, like the Paradigm or other ones, like, you know, Kurt Vonnegut's notion of the man in the hole, and all of the kind of more fancy kind of holistic ones, and also dyslexic writers like Save the Cat as well. Because they're typically more sequential thinkers as well. So I don't really like to think of any kind of structural illustration, if you like, as being better or worse than any others. I have my personal preferences and other people have their personal preferences, and on that basis, looking at them, I'd say you can do anything you like at any level whatsoever.
So, sort of for my final question, I'd like to ask, what is the best advice that you would have for folks out there trying to write something for the first time, just trying to get things going, just wanting to be, you know, write the best thing, like you said, within their sort of limitations?
I think going back to your first question, I think is really thinking about the concept or the idea or the premise or the seed of the story, whatever it is that you want to tell. Then you need to kind of put everything into that. I often talk on Bang to Write about what I call breaking story. It kind of comes from like the building world, you know, this idea of breaking ground. And I think you can actually solve a lot of problems in advance if you actually do your foundation work. And I actually have my writers apply the 5 W's to their stories, and it's based on the whole kind of journal, you know, 5 W's that are in the journalism, investigative journalism thing, which is who, what, where, when, why. So you've got who, you know, who are the characters, you know, who are the characters in terms of their role function, like protagonist, antagonist, secondaries, peripherals, what their motivations are, all that kind of stuff. That would come under why. You know, why are they doing the things that they're doing? You know, what is their goal? What is their need? What, you know, what are they doing as well? You know, in terms of the events of the story. When are they doing it? No, is it now? You know, is it present day? Is it the future? Is it the past? All those kind of things. And where as well in terms of story worlds. So is it, you know, a realistic story world? Is it just like the one that we live in now, or is it a whimsical world? You know, what's the genre? You know, all these different things. And also why would cover as well. Why do you want to tell this story? You know, because if you don't have a burning desire to tell this story, if you don't have this kind of need yourself to tell this story, then what's the point of it? I mean, very often I'll be talking to writers and I'll say, you know, why do you want to tell this story? And I'll say it's because it's really cool. It's like, well, you know, is that enough of a reason to tell the story? There's a book called The Idea by Eric Bork, who wrote Band of Brothers for Steven Spielberg. And that's a really good book, in my opinion, because he actually breaks down all the components of what he believes a good idea is about. And he uses a mnemonic, which he calls problem. And so, you know, each letter of that thing becomes an acronym for standing for certain things that you can actually kind of put your idea under the microscope for. So yeah, there's loads of, I mean, those are just 3 ways of looking at ideas and making them stand up. But yeah, definitely break your story, but not necessarily make it broken, but just break the ground on your story and ensure that it really stands up, so it has legs, as we say in the UK, that it can actually, you know, carry the characters and the structure and the genre and the tone, and so we know exactly what's going on rather than it being all kind of, so it's by design rather than accident.
Speaking of books, you were also an author. Where can we find your books? You've written several, I believe.
That's right. Yes, I've written. I've got one just here, which is writing drama screenplays, for writing and selling drama screenplays. I think for me that's probably been one of my favorite books to write, because I did case studies and was able to talk to, amongst others, Eric Heisura, who of course wrote Arrival.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to him about his movie Hours, which was the last movie that the late Paul Walker did, and I think it's a criminally underrated drama. I mean, we all know that Arrival is an awesome film and it got Oscar nominated and all that kind of stuff, but Ours is every bit as good and every bit as touching, and it's a really, really great movie. So it was a real privilege to talk to him. And of course, since then, he's also written Bird Box for Netflix as well, and he's got a whole bunch of other really exciting stuff
Yeah.
coming. So he's a really great guy to kind of look to, because he's always got some really great writing insights to share. And also, obviously, I wrote most recently the diverse characters book. So I really kind of shone a light on the notion of diversity and what it really means, and whether we're applying agendas to writing or whether we're actually talking about variety. And I was able to talk to lots of writers and directors and actors as well. And it wasn't just about race, it was also about gender. I also talked to people from the LGBT community and also from the disabled communities as well, about their representation in movies, but also in books as well, and how things are all changing, and how things are in this state of transition at the moment in the industry, and talking about things like own voices, narratives and stuff like that. And I really kind of put a whole bunch of classic tropes under the microscope, and talked about how to twist them, and how it's not about buzzwords, and it's not about trying to be woke or anything like that. It's just about actually serving audiences who literally want more variety. And we need to just kind of shine a light on all of this stuff and just make our stories more interesting, because we don't want the same old. Audiences have proved that now, and with the success of things like Wonder Woman and Black Panther at epic story worlds at epic levels in terms of budget, and we can actually again scale that down into our smaller stories and say, actually, we just don't, we want something that's new, that feels fresh, that feels authentic, because that is what the audience wants.
Lucy, thank you so much for giving me your time today. Where can people find you online, besides your YouTube channel, Bang to Write?
If they Google Bang to Write, which is BANG number 2 WRITE, they can find me pretty much everywhere online. I get everywhere. I'm like germs or something. I'm on Pinterest, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. I'm on the channel. I'm even on Tumblr, and I didn't think anyone was on Tumblr anymore, but I still am. And then of course there's the main site on which is just bangtowrite.com. If people want to Google Bang to Write free ebook, they can get a free ebook about how not to write female characters. Alternatively, they can find it on Amazon as well. It's a free download. It goes straight to your Kindle, and it's kind of like a little primer, a 15-minute read about how not to write female characters, where I talk about things that, with good examples, and also versus very, very bad ones. And hopefully people can download that, and get started on their more diverse characters.
Yes, this is definitely something that we need. Thank you so much for your time again, like I said, and I hope people are I definitely think that people are going to get something. I know I got a few knowledge bombs out of it too. But I hope to talk to you soon, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Yeah, you love it, Qui-Gon Jinn.